Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Wednesday, February 17th, 2021, and I've seen a number of comments about you guys asking about a potential rematch scenario between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. It reminds me of when I made 2020 election predictions between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump back in 2017. It's always an idea to float the previous nominee's name against the incumbent president as a possible comeback scenario, but I've never seen it garner as much attention as it has under Donald Trump, with him winning still 45% of the Republican Party vote. And I know what you might think, 45% isn't enough, but I remind you, back in 2016, he won and was the front runner with much less than 45% of the vote throughout the entirety of the primary season. He was the front runner with just 35% of the vote, ended off with 45% by the time everything was counted, didn't even win more than 50% of the vote when everything was counted and tallied by the Republican National Convention. So Donald Trump certainly can win a primary because of the Republican Party's rules. In certain primaries, winner take all, winner take most, he can win with other candidates splitting the vote, but that's besides the point. We are looking at an election prediction between President Trump and President Biden. This is a rematch. This is a return to the 2020 election in 2024. And ultimately, return candidates typically don't do well. The last time this actually worked was President Grover Cleveland. He returned back to run for office again and won. But at the same time, that is one example in history. This rarely ever works, at least on the presidential level, and I don't think Donald Trump would be the exception. Given Joe Biden's current approval rating and Donald Trump's unpopularity rating leaving office, it's very difficult to see how he could end up winning back a lot of the voters that he lost as a result of his boisterous claims about election fraud and his claims about the Capitol insurrection, and how, he flaunted being acquitted by the Senate. I mean, 57 votes against you when Democrats only hold 50 seats is not something to be proud of. Saying that you went 2-0 in impeachment is not something to be proud of. No other president besides Clinton and Johnson had ever been impeached, much less impeached twice. But, to each their own. But looking at the overall electoral map, we won't see a significant difference. We're not going to see Joe Biden flip Montana and Donald Trump flip New York because of this resurgence in support. We are going to see a very similar electoral map to what we saw in the 2020 election. And before we go into some of these swing states, we need to take a look at the 2020 election results and look at the 2016 election results, because this rematch scenario is something that I will possibly cover for a couple, just a little bit longer, through 2021, because as long as Donald Trump floats this idea of him being a major political force or, spends a lot of money with his Save America PAC, I really do think that Donald Trump could run for president in 2024 and get a lot of support. From the American people as a result of his bid, because Donald Trump is still a very recognizable name. As much as the Democratic Party wants him to be irrelevant without social media, without media coverage, he is still very much relevant. He still has a very big impact on our overall electorate, a very big impact on our national discourse. So when we're taking a look at these states, what you are going to see is pretty much he will return to holding a very strong amount of support from the states he won in 2020. We're not going to see a drastically different map. We are not going to see a drastic reduction in Donald Trump's support, even if his popularity may indicate it. So let's take a look at 2020. The 2020 election results were coincidentally, or ironically, I guess, for Donald Trump, Joe Biden received the same amount of electoral votes as Donald Trump did in 2016. 306 to 232 was the number Donald Trump won by. Same thing for Joe Biden. And how did Joe Biden do it? Well, he retained all of the states Hillary Clinton carried back in 2016. The battleground states of Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire, Maine, Virginia, Colorado, and New Mexico. That's the same thing that Joe Biden did here. He won Nevada, Colorado, New Mexico, Virginia, Minnesota, and New Hampshire and Maine, but made them a lot more safe for the Democratic Party. On top of that, he flipped 3 battleground states in the Rust Belt that were shockers to flip to Donald Trump. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, states that nobody expected to go to Donald Trump, that went to him, that put him over the top. Without these 3 states, Hillary Clinton would have been president for those past 4 years. In 2020, Joe Biden flipped them back. He flipped back Wisconsin, flipped back Michigan, and flipped back Pennsylvania. In addition to that, he was able to flip back Georgia and Arizona. These had not gone to the Democratic Party in decades. 1992 was the last time Georgia went blue, and 1996 was the last time Arizona went blue. So when Joe Biden flipped them, it was certainly very astounding. However, despite him flipping 5 states, he was unable to flip the states of Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida, and Texas. Swing states in the 2020 election that were solid for Donald Trump back in 2016, and the only state that voted to the right of where it did back in 2016 out of those 5 states was the state of Florida when it voted for Donald Trump by 3.3%. But overall, that's the general rundown of what happened in the 2020 election relative to the 2016 election. Major takeaway is that Joe Biden did better than Hillary Clinton did, and Donald Trump had a narrow underperformance in some of these states. Had we would have seen 0.6% of the vote gone a different direction, Donald Trump would have been president today. So 2020, despite the Democrats winning the popular vote by 5 percentage points, winning the House, winning the Senate, winning a trifecta for the first time since the election of 2008, the Democratic Party also, still almost lost on the presidential level. But taking a look at this rematch, we are going to see a more comfortable victory for the Democratic Party. Why? Donald Trump's support certainly has reduced, but not drastically. As many swing states as you see currently, they're likely going to be likely for the Republican Party. That means Indiana, Missouri could narrow down by just 1 to 2 percentage points and narrow down into being likely. Kansas was already likely. South Carolina, Nebraska's 1st district were already likely for Donald Trump. Alaska was also likely. Montana, almost being likely. So looking at this map, we're at 124 electoral votes so far. Joe Biden at 179. So the map is starting to even out to what we're used to. If we add in the likely states for the Democratic Party, what we are going to see is Virginia will remain a likely state for the Democratic Party. Minnesota will remain a likely state for the Democratic Party. New Hampshire will remain a likely state for the Democratic Party. Maine at large. Maine's 1st district will actually be considered safe. Donald Trump won't be able to make as many inroads in certain states because at the end of the day, when you are running a former candidate, someone who had a lower approval rating, actually, let's take a look at the approval ratings before we dive any deeper, you are going to see a reduction in support. Not drastically enough that certain safe states or certain likely states from 2016 and 2020 will flip to the Democrats, but they will still be more competitive. And safe states will move out of the safe column. And I think that this map is going to look very similar to what my Democratic best case scenario or Democratic prediction, not Democratic prediction, I guess Democrats in a good scenario prediction, leading up to the 2020 election. It may look vaguely similar, actually, to some other predictions that I put out in the past. But looking at Donald Trump's approval rating, which we will get to in just 1 second, you will see why. I expect him to lose at least maybe 2-3 support in certain states, even though they may be considered safe. They will return to being likely states as they were under Obama in 2012 and 2008. So let's take a look at Donald Trump's approval rating. Here we have it from 538. And as he was leaving office, he had a negative 19% approval rating nationwide. Negative 19%. That is a huge, 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 huge dip. I mean, leading up after the lame duck session, after you lose, typically, or you're leaving office because you were elected to 2 terms for the case of Obama, Bush, and Clinton, every president before Trump, practically. Looking at Donald Trump's leaving office, it was not a lame duck bump. If anything, it was a dip. And it was because of that Capitol insurrection that will be ingrained in the minds of many voters, regardless of political affiliation, that this is what Donald Trump will be remembered for. This is how Donald Trump's legacy will end with the American public. And looking at Election Day, what I want to point out is that, on Election Day, Donald Trump had a very okay approval rating, 44.6% approval rating the day before the election, 52.6% disapproval rating. That is a difference of only 8 percentage points. Keep in mind today is 19. Even though the difference was 8 percentage points, he still was not able to win. And 45% was arguably very good for Donald Trump. Prior to the COVID-19 bump, he had never reached these numbers. Even in the beginning of his presidency, the most he had hit was only 47.8%, never even 50%. So this was actually one of the highest points of Trump's presidency right on Election Day. He lucked out, but not enough. It wasn't enough for him to overcome the Joe Biden approval rating and the Joe Biden and Democratic support that we saw in a number of key battleground states. So this 44.5%, this 44.6%, really at the end of the day, while it may have been good for Donald Trump, it just simply was not enough. But he was -8 on Election Day, and I want to bring you back 2 additional years from this day, 2 additional years to 2018, when the Democratic Party on November 6th was able to win back control of the United States House of Representatives. This was a very monumental day. This was a day that will go down in history as a repudiation of President Trump. And that's how it always is in midterm elections. There's always going to be the opposition party gaining seats. The same way 2010 and 2014 will be remembered the same way towards Barack Obama. But looking at this approval rating, Donald Trump was disapproved of by -11 percentage points. and the Democrats still won control of the House, picking up 40 seats, winning the Senate popular vote by 20 percentage points despite losing a net 2 seats. But the main takeaway here is even in Donald Trump's 2 election performances, where Democrats were able to win back control of the Senate in 2020, were able to win back control of the House in 2018, win back control of the White House in 2020, these were low points for Trump, but not nearly as low as him leaving office. That negative 19% is the lowest it's been in quite some time. The only time it was really comparable was in December 2017, when Donald Trump had the lowest approval rating of his entire presidency. After that, the lowest approval rating dip was right after the Capitol insurrection, right in the final few weeks of the Trump presidency, and he ended off with the highest disapproval rating of his entire presidency. So even when he was at his lowest point, he did not have as high of a disapproval rating as he did leaving office. It was a higher disapproval throughout any point in the entirety of his 4 years, which leaves a very bad stain on the minds of many American voters as they remember Donald Trump as a candidate. And Joe Biden so far is remaining popular. He's approved of by 17 points nationally, and I get it. We're only a few weeks, not even a few months into the presidency, but you have to keep in mind that he's already outperforming and outpacing Donald Trump in every single poll there is. It doesn't matter where you look. He's approved of more than Donald Trump was at this point, or Donald Trump ever was throughout his entire presidency. So when we bring that back to our map, when we look at our map, that means Donald Trump is not going to gain amongst voters. He may be able to retain certain swing states just because of his ability to draw out rural voters, draw out voters that typically don't vote in high levels, but at the same time, he still loses that suburban vote. And I don't think that minority voters will be super inclined to vote for Donald Trump again, because what was going on in 2020 was the campaign against socialism, the campaign against Joe Biden as a radically left candidate. Any member of the Democratic Party can tell you Joe Biden is anything but that. Joe Biden is anything but radically left. I think anyone who actually not even part of the Democratic Party, any political analyst can tell you Joe Biden was far from being the most leftward candidate out of the bunch that ran for president in 2020. And yet Donald Trump still painted Joe Biden as a socialist. And Joe Biden laughed it off. Honestly, I don't think he did enough to get rid of that message, that implication that, Joe Biden was a socialist. But when that doesn't actually amount up to anything negative happening for a lot of these groups, specifically Hispanic voters in Florida and in Texas, across the southern border, what's going to happen is they are going to return to the Democratic Party. The same way that we saw minority voters vote for Donald Trump because the Democratic Party in 2016 was saying this will be the end for minority voters. This will be the end for minority citizens if Donald Trump is elected. Well, once he got elected and things weren't as bad as the Democratic Party made it seem, and that's arguable by some, but the general consensus was that the Democratic Party certainly cried wolf in 2016. Looking at what the Republicans did in 2020, this socialism message is not going to continue to work. Because if Joe Biden doesn't implement this radically leftist, radically socialist type of government by the time he leaves his first term, which I can guarantee you 100% will not happen because Joe Biden is not a socialist, what's going to happen is these voters are going to return to the Democratic Party and vote in the same way they did for Obama, even for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton did better amongst certain minority groups than Joe Biden. So what we are going to see is, Joe Biden solidify the states where we've seen the suburban vote turn away from Donald Trump. That means Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. That means Georgia. That means Arizona. And yes, that means that Joe Biden is going to win the presidential election against Donald Trump in a rematch. On top of that, we are probably going to see Colorado become a safe state. It was won by Biden by 13.5%. It could end up becoming a swing state in 2024. New Mexico, I think, will remain likely, but I think it'll be getting close to there. Looking at our map so far, Joe Biden is at 295 electoral votes. Like I had mentioned, we will likely see a return of minority voters to the Biden coalition. That means Nevada will still go to the Democratic Party. I don't think by a lot, but I still think that they will be able to win there. I don't think Nebraska's 2nd District has warmed up to Donald Trump as he's left office. If anything, he has lost support. When you look at the Capitol insurrection and when you look at the fact that Donald Trump did not acknowledge he lost the election, that does not help you amongst suburban voters that are typically Republican leaning, but were just upset with the way that Donald Trump handled things, thought he was immature, thought that he was someone who was not fit to be president, and this only confirms their beliefs. This only confirms what they previously thought about Donald Trump, because the way that the Democratic Party and the media spun it, not even spun it, they just put it out there. But I will say that, the media does have some type of implicit bias, but at the same time, that's everything. Everyone has an implicit bias. You watching my video, I have my own implicit bias, and as much as I do try to detach it from this video, We are all human. And at the end of the day, when I say spin things, I mean that they just cover things for many instances. But looking at what happened, Donald Trump refused to accept the election results. There was no proof of election fraud. And this kind of paints him as a sore loser in the eyes of many American voters. I've seen that comment from even Republicans, that this is something that they thought was embarrassing, that he had drawn on the election and the electoral certification for so long for absolutely nothing to change. And that's the thing. I mean, looking at the election results, we knew this would be the map 4 days after the election. And yet Donald Trump raised over $100 million. He spent more than that on election defense, on encouraging the state legislatures to try to overturn the election results. And for what? And for what? To lose, to ultimately be blocked by courts, to be blocked by the House, to be blocked by the Senate. No matter what happened, no matter how hard Donald Trump tried, he tried every single avenue, I'll say that, nothing changed. The results from 4 days were the same results as we saw on Inauguration Day. Why? Because Donald Trump couldn't prove the election fraud. It's not that these Trump appointees were liberal. No, they're far from it. But the problem was there just wasn't anything there. And that's what really hurt Donald Trump in the eyes of many American voters, even after he was leaving office. Because as he started making these claims, his approval rating started dipping and dipping and dipping. And by the Capitol insurrection, his approval rating was only 43%. Immediately following, it dipped down to 38%. He lost a lot of support that day. And the fact that he still hasn't taken full responsibility for it is something that is not going to appease many American voters. I think that Donald Trump can still win states such as Texas. I think he'll still be able to carry it in 2024. But I do think that Joe Biden, with a return of winning over some of those minority voters back to the way that they did in 2016 and 2012 and 2008, I think we could see North Carolina go blue. We could potentially see Florida go blue. I think Florida is probably going to be the closest state on this map, but I think that Donald Trump will still be able to retain some of these battleground states. But at the end of the day, looking at a lot of where Donald Trump lost support relative to 2016, we're probably going to see a continuation of those trends. Arizona and Georgia get bluer, Colorado gets bluer, New Mexico gets bluer, Texas gets bluer. Florida, North Carolina. Florida actually went redder, but North Carolina certainly went bluer. And I think that with a decreased support amongst Hispanic voters, especially with that socialist message, which definitely resonated this election, but definitely wouldn't in 2024, especially since Joe Biden is already looking like he's not going to be a very, I would say, progressive president. The only thing they can really slam him on is just Democratic legislation. That was sort of well-known policy, well-known things that the Democratic Party had been promising for decades. So really, I don't see that messaging working in 2024. So overall, Joe Biden may not have a landslide victory in 2024 against Donald Trump. In fact, this is one electoral vote less than what I predicted for the 2020 presidential election. I don't know where that one electoral vote went. Maybe it was Maine 2nd District. I don't know why I would have characterized that for Joe Biden. I thought I said that Donald Trump was going to win there. But looking at this map, a 2024 map is comparable to the map that I drew back in 2020. And in fact, this is actually a less margin of victory, or a closer margin of victory for Joe Biden than it was back in October 2020. I think we severely underestimated Donald Trump's support, but that was with an approval rating where he was down -9, and he still lost. Down -19 leaving office, with the majority of Americans wishing for you to be removed, not even impeached, but removed. At the end of the day, it doesn't look too partisan when the majority of Americans want it to happen. And it's still, looking at that, even through the final few days, 2 days out, people still wanted Donald Trump to be removed to send a message that that happened on the Capitol, that the Capitol insurrection was simply not right. And the fact that 7 Republicans, the first time we've seen crossover vote in the conviction vote in United States history, was against Donald Trump. So he certainly isn't going to, he may be able to ride into 2024 as the Republican frontrunner, but he certainly won't be able to ride off into the general election and say, I'm a return of a candidate who's loved and adored by the American people. That was never true, and it's especially not true now. So the final map is Joe Biden, 349 electoral votes, flipping the states of North Carolina and Florida. Donald Trump retains the battleground states of Iowa, Ohio, and Texas, and the battleground congressional district of Maine's 2nd District. Overall, what we see is Donald Trump receiving 189 electoral votes. Keep in mind, Joe Biden solidifies his victories in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Virginia, Colorado, and New Mexico, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. States that he carried in 2020 that he's going to expand on his margin of victory to make it even even larger heading into 2024. So this is the rematch map, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. Let's go ahead and try to see if we can end this video on 2024. Hopefully it will. I tried that last time and it reached 2020. So what we're just going to do, take a look at this approval rating for just a moment, and we're going to get there. We're just a few seconds away, but yeah, so major takeaway, Donald Trump much less popular than he was before, and as a result, he is going to receive an electoral down bump from what he had previously. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my other 2024 election videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.